Today's speaker, her name is Her Grace Sukhavaha Mataji. I would like to give a very brief, as she said, brief lowdown or a little introduction of who she is. So Sukhavaha Mataji was, okay, so I'm gonna switch to Hindi very quickly and then come back to English. Okay, so I'm going to switch every now and then with languages just to make sure that all our listeners are on board. Sukhavaha Mataji श्रील प्रभुपाद जी के शिष्य हैं. बहुत शुरुआत से आध्यात्मिक जीवन से वो जुड़ी हुई हैं. उनके पिता भी एक पादरी थे और अभी भी हैं और उन्होंने भक्ति में बहुत आगे उन्होंने अलग-अलग प्रोजेक्ट्स में भी वो इन्वॉल्व हैं और ऑब्वियसली भक्त हैं और बहुत समय से अभी माताजी न्यू वृंदावन में रहती हैं और बरसाना में जैसे आई कैंप हुआ और भक्तिवेदांता हॉस्पिटल से भी माताजी कनेक्टेड हैं. तो इस और माताजी की एक किताब भी है जिसका नाम है रिवीलिंग. एक सेकेंड, किसी की आवाज आ रही है. आप सबसे यस, रिवीलिंग द हार्ट्स. आप सबसे प्रार्थना है कृपया अपने विंडो को प्लीज म्यूट पे कर लीजिए ताकि इसके बाद जब माताजी बात शुरू करेंगी तो फिर उसमें कुछ इंटरप्शन ना हो. थैंक यू. सो माताजी ने रिवीलिंग द हार्ट्स प्रैक्टिस ऑफ कंपैशन नाम की एक किताब भी लिखी है. तो अब मैं माताजी को ट्रांसफर करूंगा. Thank you so much everyone for joining. Just a quick one back in English. So Mataji's spirituality has always been a very strong part of her life. Her father is a minister, and she did a bachelor's in social welfare from Pennsylvania State University. She of course went on to meet Srila Prabhupada and become a disciple and find spiritual life through the path of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And she's also involved with the Barsana I Camp, also with Bhaktivedanta Hospital in Mumbai. And she's also a published author of a book called A Heart Connection. And after that, we'll open the floor to questions. You can write the questions in the chat box, and then I will make sure I will bring those questions up with Mataji. So if you have any questions, please keep them right now on the side. And when we open the floor to questions, you can put them in the chat box. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to say a little prayer to Srila Prabhupada because we don't have a lot of time. So, Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Bhattacharya Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bhashachitesh Tarni. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasati Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare.
Hello.
So, okay, am I unmuted? Okay. All right. So, welcome everyone. This is a huge, okay, I'm muted again here. Let me see.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. All right. Okay. I just keep seeing these signs coming up. So, since we only have a short time and this is like a huge topic, we're talking about parenting. And I'd like to get to the core important parts and not so much the details. Maybe we can get into some details in the questions. So if this was an open forum, I would ask the question, so what do you feel is the most important thing that children need. And I'm assuming that someone or you are going to say love. So then how is that love communicated and manifested to your child? There are so many ways. We feed our children, we give them shelter, we care for their body. And a lot of times we get caught up with the physical aspects, caring for the body, making arrangements, getting them to sleep, making sure they eat. And we forget sometimes that there's something as important as the physical needs, and that is the emotional needs. So love is communicated by taking care of the physical body, and it's also communicated by taking care of the emotional needs of the child. Now, adults also have emotional needs. We are sentient beings. We all have emotional needs. We have feelings and needs. And it's important to address these needs. I'd like to say that the foundational core of a soul coming into a human body, it feels very unstable for a soul to be in a human body. First of all, the human body is temporary. Second of all, the human body is actually foreign for the soul. We're not really this body. And so it feels very kind of unstable and insecure. And when children come into this world, when they come into their body, it's very disconcerting. They don't really know what's going on, and they depend on their parents to be there for them, to show them what they need to know, to give them the support and the security. So I'd like to say that security is one of the most important foundational issues that we all require, some kind of security. And so it's so important to have an emotional attachment with your children so that they can feel secure. Now, generally in Krishna consciousness, we talk about being detached, and we don't talk about being attached. And being attached can be seen as a negative or a material aspect, but actually attachment is so important. So as parents, when we are Krishna conscious, we're there for our children emotionally. We hold them, we give them that security, we give them that secure attachment. When a child feels securely attached from childhood, from early childhood, they can grow into a well-rounded, mature, and emotionally balanced adult. And then they can learn how to detach themselves from different aspects of the world as they grow, and then they can live into becoming detached. And when leaving the body, they can let go. But we start out with the foundation of attachment. We start out with loving care. Now, there's another very important principle that I can't give what I don't have. So if I, as the parent, am not feeling secure, if I'm not feeling supported, if I'm not getting the care and the needs, if my needs are not being met and I'm not getting the care that I need, I'm going to feel stressed. I'm going to feel, maybe pressured. And then I'm not going to be able to actually be there for my child. In fact, I might actually be becoming upset with my child. So that, am I muted? Okay. Am I muted? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. So then, in giving ourselves care, we can be balanced and we can be there and we can be emotionally present for our children. So self-care is like actually foundational. Again, if I'm stressed, I'm going to share that stress with my child. If my child is not feeling well and I'm not getting enough sleep, and then there's pressure on me and I feel stressed, I might get upset with the child. And rather than being there to support the child, I might actually cause more anxiety for the child. My anxiety is definitely felt by my child. My stress is felt by my child. I'm sure some of you mothers notice that if you're upset or you're crying, your child might also be upset. They also might cry when you're crying. They feel your energy. So children learn more by your energy, more by what they feel than the words that you tell them. If you say to your child, don't touch that. They feel scared. They feel they did something wrong. They feel bad. It makes them feel very insecure. And if you can say to a child, rather than the negative don't, because children can't do a don't. And usually when you say don't touch that, the first thing they do is touch that because they don't know what don't is. They can't do a don't. They're trying to do what you want them to do. So you say, the stove is hot. The stove is hot. Keep your hands away from the stove or you might get burnt. Now, of course, if they're going to reach for something hot, you might say, stop, and grab their hand. That is a natural reaction. But then you need to come down and say, okay, the stove is hot. The stove is hot. And then you can hold their hand and have them touch it and then let them know this is hot. Keep your hand away from the stove. So that's a simple example of how we can affect our child by the energy we use in our speaking. One day I was giving a class about parenting, and there was a child, maybe a 2-year-old, playing in front of me where I was speaking. And I said, when I raise my voice, and I could see the child's body was shaking. The child didn't cry or anything like that, but the child's body shook when I yelled. Children can actually feel our energy and they respond more to our energy, more to the energy that we're carrying than to our words. Words come a little bit later and words don't exactly communicate everything. Body language and the energy of our body communicates so much more. Now, children learn more by what they see and what they experience than from the words. So children learn by what they see. So if they see a parent that's always in stress, they're going to learn how to be in stress because they're imitating their parent. If they see a parent that's always calm, they're going to learn how to be calm. They learn by what they see and by what they experience. So it's very, very important for us as parents to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, especially the mother. The mother is kind of like the pivot in the family. She's the center. She's, taking care of a lot of details, the home details, the cooking, the cleaning. She's a lot of times responsible for the emotional needs of the child, although fathers also have that responsibility and they may need to learn how to practice in that area. And so it's very important that the mother takes care of her needs and doesn't keep putting her needs on the back burner. Now, as parents, we tend to think, oh, I don't have time to take care of myself. I got to do this. And we keep pushing our needs to the back burner. Short term, that might seem like it's helpful. Long term, the effects can be devastating. And I'll speak from example. When I was a parent, I was told to go out and collect funds for the temple. And this is what we did. So I left my children, and my children's emotional needs were not cared for. I mean, they had other parents that were taking care of them, and they had some emotional needs, but it's different with your parent. Having the love of your parent, having the attention of your parent, having the emotional presence of your parent is so very important for children. They need us. And yes, they need to eat. Yes, they need to sleep, but they need our attention. They need to know that they exist, that they matter, that they're of value. And when we teach our children of their inherent value, and we value them, and we value what they have to say and what they have to share with us, when we validate what they have to share with us, it gives them a very strong sense of self-security. It gives them a strong sense of, we could call it self-esteem. And it's a lot harder to develop self-esteem as an adult than it is as a child if we have it foundationally. So I'll speak for myself again. I didn't have a lot of self-esteem. As a child, there was fighting in my house. Sometimes my mother was stressed and she would yell a lot because she just couldn't handle 4 kids by herself. It was too much for her. And my brother was older than me, and he would punch me, and so we would fight. So there was fighting and arguing. So I developed a lot of anxiety as a child, a lot of anxiety, had a lot of insecurity. And this probably came from my last life and in my early childhood development, but I had a lot of anxiety. And I still deal with that as an adult. I feel my anxiety coming up once in a while. Last night, I couldn't go to sleep, and I was just noticing how my anxiousness was keeping me awake, and I was anxious. So I just laid and chanted and connected with Krishna, but my own anxiety was preventing me from sleep. So if we don't understand ourselves and we don't understand what we need, it's going to be hard for us to understand our child and understand what they need. We're not going to be on that platform. And I had no knowledge of emotional needs and emotional support as a young parent. I didn't have that information. And we weren't taught that. And so I learned it later on in life. So self-esteem is so important. And getting a healthy self-esteem as an adult, it takes something, but it's very possible. I started working on my own self-esteem when I was about 47, 48. So it was later on in life that I got a sense of myself, and I didn't always have to go outside to validate myself. So when children are validated when they're little, they can learn to self-validate. If they're not given that validation and that understanding as a child, and learning how to honor themselves and take care of themselves through the example of the parents, then it presents more problems later on. The first 5 years of a child's life are so vital. We think they're not learning much, they're not going to school, they're not really learning much, but they learn a lot about life by watching their parents. Now, that might bring some anxiety up for parents. Oh no, they're watching this, they're watching me argue, they're watching me get upset. I'm ruining my child. Please be gentle and compassionate with yourself. You can only do the very best that you can do, and you can't do better than that. And if you're stressed, you're stressed. And what there would be to do is to just even acknowledge, I'm feeling stressed right now. I'm feeling anxious right now. Or mommy's not feeling very good right now. I'm not feeling very good. I need to take a little nap, or I'm not feeling very good. I don't know if I can play with you right now. I'm not feeling very good. I'm sorry. So being able to recognize how we're feeling and what we're needing, you know, we can communicate that to a child rather than, why are you always bothering me? I can't play with you. I don't want to play. I can't play with you. I've got too much to do. There's a whole nother energy there than mommy doesn't feel good right now. She can't play with you. So just to understand that. Now, of course, I'm talking about young children, and I'm sure some of you may have teenagers. I just wanted to say a little something about teenagers. Children go through 2 phases of autonomy. So that's when they're 2 years old, they start developing their own self-identity, and they learn that they can say no, no, no. So that's at the age of 2. It's called, we call it the terrific 2s. It's a terrific challenge. And, you know, we want to notice how much we say no, 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 don't do that. Or we say, oh, you wanna touch the stove is hot. So, you know, being a little bit more conscious of the words that we're choosing for a young child. The second phase of autonomy is when a child becomes a teenager. And now they're starting to find themselves, find out who I am separate from my parents. And so the teenage phase is sometimes even more challenging than the 2-year-old phase, because now the child might even be bigger than us. They might be taller than us. And when they say no, you can't pick them up and take them in the car with you. You're coming with us to the temple. The child can't take care of themselves, but a teenager, 14-year-old might say, I don't want to go, and you're not going to make me. So as we learn about ourselves, and as we grow in self-understanding and connecting to ourselves, when we're connected and rooted in ourselves, we can much more easily connect to our children. If we're not grounded and connected to our own self, our own emotions, and our own emotional needs, we're going to have a really hard time connecting to our children. So connection is so much more important than correction. Connection, connecting with our children, giving them the attention, connecting with them emotionally, looking at them, paying attention to them as best we can while managing. I have to cook right now. Do you want to sit here and watch me cook, or do you want to play? I want to cook so we can have dinner. I can't play with you right now, but I can listen to you while I'm cooking if you want to tell me a story or you want to read to me. So you really need to be present and creative as a parent, because every day is not the same. And our children, as they grow, and they grow pretty fast, they change. Each day they might be a different person. You know, as a 2-year-old, they can do this. Then as a 3-year-old, they do this. And as a 4-year-old. So we have to be constantly conscious and aware of how our child is changing and how the needs of our child is changing. And that means we have to be self-aware. So conscious parenting is a very, very, very short-term and long-term way to support our children. So I'm a little bit over the half-hour mark, and I did want to leave time for questions because I know you have questions. If you want me to elaborate on more of what I said, you can ask that question. Just feel free. Let's open it up to questions now, because I know it's important for parents to have their questions answered. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sukhavaha Mataji. So now I'm just going to very quickly, as people are sending in their questions, because we're also going live on YouTube and Facebook. So we're receiving questions from all those places. In the meantime, while I receive those questions, I just wanted to quickly summarize some of the things you've mentioned.
Okay,
and then I'll
great.
quickly summarize them in Hindi as well.
Okay, great.
So let's see. Hi, Krishna. So it's Ricky here again. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of the points Mataji talked about. So Mataji talked about how children feel our energy, and she talked about how, in addition to all the other needs that we're constantly fulfilling, the emotional needs are just as important. And sometimes we forget that. So another thing she talked about is very earlier on, fulfilling that emotional need by validating them. And that builds a healthy self-esteem over time, which is much more difficult later on in life, especially crucial years are the earlier years, up until 5 years before they go outside to school, to other places. They are constantly observing. Then again, you may think, oh my gosh, that's a lot of pressure because they're constantly watching. But self-care as a parent is also very important. It is okay, instead of, say, rather than yelling at a child or being frustrated, we can speak logically to the child and explain, well, I am doing this activity right now, or I'm tired, or I'm sick, or whatever it may be that needs to be done. How about I will try my very best. You can read to me here, you can play. The challenge perhaps here is to get creative. And the word Mataji used was conscious parenting. And that is something that you can do while the child is young. When they're 2 is when they first start saying no. So when we say no at that age, they listen and then they start copying. And the second time they say it is when they become teenagers. So it's constantly a challenge as they're growing, as you're all probably aware. And they're constantly every day a new person, and they bring in new needs. So being aware of the needs of the self and the child, and trying to find creative solutions. So now you might be wondering what those creative solutions could be, or multiple other questions. So now we're going to look at the questions, and as you bring me the questions, I'm going to present them to Mataji, and then she could perhaps take them case by case. Was that an okay summary, Mataji?
Yeah, that was an okay summary. Yeah, I'm concerned that if you translate everything into Hindi, I'm just a little concerned that, because this is only an hour, right?
Yeah. So we have 24 minutes.
Yeah.
So
I'm just concerned there's not going to be. I mean, I'm willing to extend it over a little bit if some people want to stay a little longer. I'm willing.
That would be, we would be very grateful.
Yeah.
So we will see if someone needs more clarity, then we can translate. Otherwise, it's not necessary.
Can we ask how many people need Hindi translation? Do we know how many people need that?
It might be hard to find the exact number.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so you do what you need to do. That's fine.
So I will pass it back on to you. You're on spotlight again. I'm just going to open the chat, and I see lots of questions here already. So starting with, so first question here is from Ruchi Gupta, and she says, how do we take care of our need at this age as a mother of 2 kids?
Right.
So yeah, that is the complete question.
Yeah. Having children is all encompassing. They take, you're on call 24/7 pretty much. It's a job that is very taxing. It can be taxing. And I'd like to say that, how can we take care of our needs when we have 2 young children? Well, one thing that's important, when we learn how to take care of our needs, we're actually modeling and showing our children how to take care of their needs too. so that as adults, they won't necessarily be running around trying to figure out how to take care of their needs and their children's needs also. It's a culture that will have to be cultivated. I would say that it's not a prevalent culture in our worldwide global society. The culture is more of the culture in our society is more of a domination, hierarchical culture. So I'm the parent, you're the child. So I tell you what to do and you do it. The culture is much more, we manage things sometimes by moving things around and trying to control and correct and make things right. And we don't exactly know how to connect. So learning emotional connection, connecting to our own feelings, needs is really important. There's a book by Marshall Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication, The Language of Life. And then, of course, in my book, Revealing the Heart, The Practice of Compassion, there are very specific ways that you can understand your feelings and your needs and how to connect. And it's a practice. It takes time, but start now. You know, you don't have to be perfect to start. You just start, you start practicing, and then you can start to see, oh, I practiced and that had a different response. And oh, I was stressed out and I didn't practice. And then you can go back and say to your child, I'm sorry I yelled. I was feeling very stressed out and I didn't really have the bandwidth to talk to you. I'm sorry. Let me give you some attention now. You know, learning how to, communicate with our children compassionately. I hear you have something important to tell me. Just give me a minute. I'm talking to somebody right now. Let me finish with this person and then I'll give you attention. So you teach them by your example. So learning to take care of yourself, it takes something, but if you have the time and you can read some of those books and start practicing, how am I feeling right now? And what do I need? And if you notice that you're feeling stressed a large part of the day, maybe you want to try to simplify your life a little bit so that you're not so stressed. How can I take off? What are the stresses? How can I relieve some of the stresses so that I actually have time to be there for my child? What can I do? Do I need a maid? Do I need to go grocery shopping once a week instead of every single day? Start getting creative. Think about how can I de-stress my life? I hope that was helpful.
Yes, Mataji, very helpful. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I'm ready for the next.
So the next question we have is from Amit Ahuja. He says, I live in a joint family and I try to deal with my child the way you're telling, but other family members do not deal with him in the same way. How can I cope up with this situation?
Yes, you've got multiple levels of relationships and connections. So again, being grounded in yourself and being connected would maybe have you be able to communicate with the joint family members in a way that's saying, I'd like my child to to learn not just to get treats when they do something good. I don't want to just reward them when they do something good. I want to teach them, to do things inherently, and, giving them a treat sometimes is good, but I don't want them to just be working for a result, working for a treat. So, maybe if you could ask me before you give them a treat, not all the time, but sometimes if you could ask me, is it okay to give them a treat right now? Or if they're crying, maybe this is how I like to deal with my child when they're crying. Maybe you have some suggestions and you could listen to their suggestions. Again, your family members are people too, and they like to be validated. So you don't want to resist the extended family. you want to learn how to connect to them also. So you want to learn how to validate. You can validate someone's feelings and their suggestions, and that doesn't mean you have to take them. You can say, wow, that's an interesting suggestion. I never thought of that. I can possibly try that. But you know, or I've tried that, and this is the result that I've seen. So I find when I do it this way, I get a different result, and this is the result I want to get. So it's all in the way we communicate. It's all in the way we communicate. If we communicate to our family members, leave me alone, I'm the parent, don't get involved, stop butting your nose in my business. That is going to create defensive behavior and probably more resistance back. And then you're going to have more emotion over here dealing with your extended family members, and you're going to have less time for your child. So it's a balance. It's all about learning how to balance, learning how to communicate in a way that validates everybody's points of view, while at the same time, validating, the structure of how you want to raise your child. And then you can let your child know, let's say you live in an extended family, and let's say the relatives, let's say they eat meat, for example. And then the child says, oh, what's that? Well, Grandpa, he chooses to eat meat. And in our family here, we choose not to eat meat. We're vegetarians, that's what we choose. And that's his choice. His choice is to eat meat. But you're being brought up by us. And our choice is we want to be compassionate to the animals. We don't want to eat the animals. So, that's our choice, and your grandfather has his choice. So Krishna gives us all choice. He gives us all free will. So this is what we're choosing for you right now, because we're your parent. This is how we're doing it right now. This is how our family does it. So you don't have to fight or make anybody wrong. And it takes something to be that conscious, but consciousness is a part of Krishna consciousness. And if you take it as a spiritual practice, every single exchange in your life can be part of your spiritual growth. How can I talk to my relatives in a compassionate way, even if I don't agree with them? That's spiritual development. So, put all this into the realm of spirit, and it makes it much more makes it more powerful and makes it more appealing, like I'm actually working on my spiritual life when I learn how to talk to my children and my relatives. So I hope that was helpful.
If maybe we could have a follow-up question from Amita to see maybe some specific concerns, an example of a specific concern that Amita might have. So Amita, would you like to do you have a follow-up question, if you'd like to share with us? I'm trying to unmute you.
No, that answers my question. I'll try to follow her advice.
Yeah, it's about connecting. You want to really connect. You want to honor and validate your family members. Most of us are little children in grown-up bodies. A lot of us emotionally, we're little children in grown-up bodies. And so when you really, honor and validate your family members, like you want to honor and validate your children, by honoring and validating yourself at the same time, there's a lot of honoring and validating. There's a lot of, it creates a culture of respect, and a lot more wonderful things can happen in that culture of respect and honoring.
Thank you so much, Amita. So moving to the next question, we have a question here from Kapil Vats, and he says, Hare Krishna, sometimes we see that despite good parenting, children don't grow up as good adults, but children with not such good parenting sometimes happen to be appearing as gentlemen as well. This makes us feel that is this karma at work, or is this the parenting at work?
Yeah, well, I would say it's both. You know, generally we do come into this life with something from our last life. So we may have developed ourselves in a certain way, or we may have had some negative experiences in our past life and we're coming to work them out. So karma definitely plays part of a role. Parenting, on the other hand, is interesting because sometimes, I'll give myself as an example. So I was not emotionally there for my children. You know, I was not there for my children emotionally. My son went into the Gurukula ashram when he was 4 years and 3 months. Boom, that's it. Hardly got to see him. You know, we didn't go places together. And yeah, my 2 daughters were taken care of by other parents when they were even younger than that. So so my son, who's now 42, when he became a parent, he decided, I am not going to parent the way my parents parented it. I am going to do it the opposite of my parents. I'm going to be there for my kids. I'm going to be emotionally present for my kids. And it was a little challenging for him. He had to grow himself. He had to, you know, learn, because he didn't have a model of that. So he had to start practicing and learning. And when he would get upset, he would say, wow, like, you know, I never wanted to be like this. You know, my parents were like this and I never wanted to be like this. And here I am being like that. So then he had to work on himself and deal with his upsets and his anger and whatever was going on. So sometimes, you know, having a not so good parenting, I'll use myself as an example, creates a parent or an adult that's more conscious because they're switching over. They're learning from a negative experience. And again, you know, as devotees in the early days, you know, we brought our children into the movement. We brought our children up in Krishna consciousness, and we thought, you know, they're just going to go in the ashram, they're going to chant, they're going to learn everything, and they're going to be pure devotees very early on in life because we're giving them all the Krishna consciousness. And a lot of the children were abused, neglected, some were sexually abused. And so that intense fanatical parenting had a negative effect. And instead of the devotees' children's, the second generation becoming pure devotees, some of them actually don't like Krishna consciousness because they had such a negative experience. So sometimes a negative experience can propel someone to change in a very good way. And sometimes a negative experience can push a child away. Now, maybe a parent is a good parent and a good devotee. There is a point in time when a child grows to an adult and they have their own choice. And as parents of adult children or pre-adult children, we want to learn how to give our children the freedom of choice. We can't follow them throughout their life and tell them what to do. And if we do, they may resent us for that because we're not giving them free expression. We're not giving them their free will, which Krishna gave them. We don't really have a right to take their free will away from them. If we're if we're a parent that's encouraging our child and accepting and loving our child no matter what they choose, we can connect with them at a more deep level. Just let's say, for an example, a child is going through some trouble and they turn to alcohol. Let's say they turn to alcohol. So instead of like getting angry at them for turning to alcohol, we can say, what's going on here? You must not be feeling very happy. No, I just like it, takes the edge off, so we can try to connect and really just love and accept our children no matter what they go through. And that love and acceptance and having our arms open, not rejecting our children for maybe the choices that they make, keeping our arms open. I'm here for you. If you ever need me, if you're ever in trouble, if you ever find yourself, I'm here as a support for you. Not that we're a support, like an enabler, like I'm going to give you money every time you need it, but I love you. And yeah, I love you. And I accept you, no matter if you're practicing devotee, or if you just like Krishna, or if you don't like Krishna, I still love you. That was a big, long answer, but I hope that was helpful.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
I guess.
Thank you so much for that wonderful question, that wonderful answer. Going to the next question, we have here from Vidyavati Mataji. I suppose this is from the perspective of a teacher, or perhaps someone outside the family. The question is, if you could please give some advice on how to cope with a teenager who had an emotionally disturbing childhood. Sometimes it might be tough to make their parents understand, and also the child is still suffering. So what would you suggest for this person who's on the periphery?
Yeah, understanding and validating when a child has had an emotionally rough childhood. There may be a lot of suppressed emotions. There may be a lot of sadness and hurt, and that is generally covered over with anger and resentment. So generally, when we, like a child that's 2, you'll see a child that's 2 usually cries and is hurt more. Once if those emotions of hurt and pain and insecurity are not dealt with as a 2-year-old, the child may grow up, and as a teenager, then they become resentful and angry. Anger is a secondary emotion for hurt. It covers the hurt. I feel so hurt. You hurt me, and I'm so angry now. I want to, push you away or vent out or act out or something. So, the child is suffering, and I would probably say that the parents are also suffering. There is a lot of suffering in this material world. There's a lot of suffering. For a soul to be in a human machine, it's painful. It's hard to reconcile the difference between, being who I am, the soul, and what do I do with this body and this mind and these emotions. But it's very important to validate the child's experience, validating their emotions, and maybe helping them to sort them out. So what is it that you're angry about? And how could we heal that suffering part of you? How could we heal that pain? I hear you're in a lot of pain. So what can we do to heal that? I'm sure you don't enjoy being in pain. What could we do? What can we do? And then you can investigate and be creative and investigate with the child, depending on the age. Would you like to talk to somebody regularly about your feelings? Maybe your parents have no clue how to deal with feelings. They're not equipped. They just don't know what to do. Would you like to talk to somebody regularly and sort through these feelings and see what they're all about and understand yourself? Helping the child to understand themselves, helping them to get some kind of support to help them to understand themselves. That's always a good thing. So finding someone that can do that, and at least we can support and validate someone when they're experiencing an emotion validating their emotions. When people are angry, sometimes people get angry and they say, I'm sorry, I'm so angry. I said, no, you have a right to be angry. Your needs haven't been met for a long time. And so you're feeling anger. You know, I don't take it personal when somebody's upset and angry. They're just upset and angry. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It means their needs aren't getting met. So, you know, really learning to support a child and validate their feelings and emotions. And then what can we do about this? What can we now do to support you to process these emotions so that you can heal that inner pain? And then you can go on in life and not, you know, not have this sore, this oozing sore affecting you throughout your life. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you. Vidyavati Mataji, do you have a follow-up to that that you'd like to ask? Thank you. I had a follow-up question, but before I ask the follow-up question, I just wanted to request anyone who wants to ask any other questions, please post them on the chat, and so that I may ask Mataji. So, oh, I see already someone is posting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm willing to go for another half an hour if we need to. It's up
Thank
to
you.
you. Yeah.
That's very kind. So we'll see how it goes with the questions, and then
Yes,
accordingly
absolutely.
we can.
Absolutely.
But thank you. That's very, very kind and gracious. So let's see. So it says.
Oh, what about your follow-up question?
I had a follow-up question, but I'll keep it until
Okay.
whenever there's no
Okay.
question, then I'll
Okay.
ask. So a question has popped up here from Sri Prayasi Mataji here, and she says, Hare Krishna, Pamho, how do you deal with an introvert teenager who's not open to discussion? How do you know what's going on in their heart?
Right. So some children are very talkative and some aren't. And this could come from past lives, and it could be a protective mechanism. It's hard to exactly say where that pattern of behavior came from, but it's definitely the child, you know, maybe doesn't know how to express. Maybe the child is afraid to express, you know, yeah. There could be so many different things that are going on. The one thing that a child needs is to understand that there's nothing wrong with them being introverted. There's nothing wrong with that. They're not bad. They're not crazy. They're not sick. They just, you know, and then you can ask, you know, I can't read your mind and I can't read your heart, and I see you making a frown on your face. Is there something that you want to say, or maybe you're afraid to say, or you know, I won't judge you for what you say, but then you have to really not judge them for what they say. Yeah, I hate this person. If they say something and then we respond back with, how could you say that? Boom, we've shut them down again. So, you know, are you interested in expressing yourself? Some people can't express themselves necessarily in words. Maybe they want to express themselves in dancing or singing or writing or drawing. There are so many ways that we can express our inner emotions. You know, maybe, you know, you can say, you know, is there, I'm sensing that I'm sensing that there's a lot going on inside of you. I don't know what it is. And, you know, maybe you're not inclined to tell me, which is okay, but I'm sensing that maybe, you know, giving a voice to what it is that's inside of you is just gonna, you know, help you with your connecting to your own self. So maybe you can maybe draw your feelings or sing or dance them out, and you can do it in the privacy of your own room. I don't even have to watch, but I think it's important that whatever's inside of you gets validated and expressed, even if it's just expressed to your own self. So you can encourage them in the creative arts, and you can get very creative. Like, what might you like to do? What would you like to do? What aligns with your self-expression? Well, I just like to read books and go into an imaginary world. Okay. And what did you learn from that book that you read? Can you share something, and just be generous, compassionate, and open. And when they do open up and share something, receive it, accept it, validate them for opening up. Sometimes people tell me the most awful things, and I say, thank you so much for sharing that. That took a lot of courage for you to share that. I don't say, oh my gosh, how awful. No, it's like, wow, that was really in there for a while. That was really hard for you to say that. It took a lot of courage for you to express that. Thank you so much for expressing that. So it takes something, but again, validating, getting creative, letting them express themselves in different formats. So that's what I would try. And then you can try something. If something works, then that's great. If something doesn't work, then try something else. And don't get too pushy about it too. Sometimes introverts need space. They need some space to work it all out. And if you come in their space and say, tell me what it is, let's work this out right now, it shuts them down even more. Does that make sense? Was that helpful?
Yes, Mataji, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prancy Mataji. It's very interesting what you said about trying to help them find their own self-expression or form of self-expression. Actually, the next couple of questions that I see here are the flip side of that. It's a compound question here. I see about 2 questions that are similar, so I'm going to read them both out.
Okay.
The major difference is the age. So the first question is, my child is just a 1.5 years old, and what practical things can we do to connect him more to Krishna consciousness? And he sees his cousins, he already seems to be fond of his mobile phone, and he creates a lot of, like when we take the mobile phone away from him, he cries, and then you have a similar version of it, but here's someone sharing a similar thing, but says, my son is 14 and he's gotten addicted to online gaming, similar sort of thing. But the age difference is that it's very interesting. You talked earlier about those 2 autonomy times that they get autonomous. So this time at 14, he has become very aggressive and abusive as well. How do I handle him, especially now since he's not attending regular school and meeting people? It's the same with the 1.5-year-old. It's COVID, and people are trying to keep at home safe. So what do we do in situations like this?
Yes, I'd like to say it's quite an intense year. It's definitely an intense year. It's intensified everything, all the emotions, everything. And so, children they like to play. Children like to play. And I remember as a child, I would go outside and play. We didn't have any devices. So it's a common problem that, children are getting addicted to the phone. It's like my grandsons love to play games. They're 15 and 17 now. And so, but then I try to remember back when I was a child. And so what did I do and what was I addicted to? So I was addicted to maybe reading these puzzle books or these mystery books and trying to figure out the mystery. And, like I could spend hours doing that. So it was a little bit of a different kind of a game, but, it was entertaining. And it was like, they are using their mind. So, children want to play, and that's kind of become the popular form of play at this time in the universe. So you want to validate that they want to play. You want to validate that they want to play. And then you can suggest, you want to validate, yes, you want to play and you like to play. Can we go outside and play? Can we go for a walk? Can you, and I know it's COVID times, but you want to see, are there other ways of playing? Can we play this game? Get some board games, get some card games, get some other kind of games that, let's play this one where we build the blocks and you put one block on and I put one, and let's see who can balance it the most, and then it falls down. So you want to get creative again. You want to understand their need for play. And then, especially with the 1.5-year-old, it's a little easier. Now the teenager, you want to understand, they want to play, and it's really, it's an identity crisis being a teenager. It is so frustrating. It's frustrating. You're trying to figure out your life. You're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, and you don't want to figure out what you want to do with your life. You still want to be a kid. You don't want to have to take responsibility, but now you're growing up, and now you're going to have to take responsibility. It's so confronting for a teenager, but it's all unspoken. It's all unspoken. It's just all inside there, and it's all suppressed. All these feelings and emotions are coming up. Sexuality is coming up. All these things are like in your face, and then you're starting to have to manage your own life, and you just want to I just want to go play. So it makes sense when you look at it in that context. It's like, yeah, sure. I want to distract myself. I just want to play. I don't want to think about my homework. I don't want to think about how hard it is. I just want to play and entertain myself. That would be kind of a normal response. So if we put pressure on our child and, again, invalidate them, they're going to resist us more. Whatever we resist persists. So if we resist them and resist what they're doing and try to get them to change, they're going to just resist us back 10 times more, because it's like, I'm a teenager now, you're not going to tell me what to do. And then they're going to get aggressive. So we want to see how might we be being aggressive? We might be being aggressive in a very passive way. So we want to invite our children. We want to create and invite things for our children to do that might entertain them, that might interest them. So you can say, well, is there an interesting project that we could work on that would use the computer? My grandson is studying programming now because he really likes the computers, and he built his own computer. So, what would you like? What do you like to do? What do you want to do? Trying to find out what their interests are and trying to validate. Yeah, of course you want to play. It's natural to want to play. And can we find other things that interest you that can also prepare you for when you can't play all the time. So, you really just want to be very gentle, pretty understanding. You don't want to just be, okay, do whatever you want to do. I'm not going to talk to you. And you don't want to be in their face. So it's challenging. So you invite, you encourage, you validate, you ask questions. That's another really good strategy that I found. even with adult kids, children that are like over 20, you know, giving advice to a teenager or an adult child doesn't usually work. But asking them questions can be very helpful. Oh, so what is it that you like? What do you see in this game? What does this game provide for you? Be a little interested. What is it about this game that you like? Can we find another strategy, you know, to fulfill your interest and your need besides just this? I know Minecraft is a game that a lot of kids like to do because they can control things, they can move things, and they can build things, and they can break things apart. You know, it's a creative process. And so, you know, are there things that we can create, you know, in reality, not just on the computer screen? Can we create other things? But I know it's part of their creative energy, if Minecraft is, at least. And then there's the gaming things. So you can say, would you be interested in trying this Minecraft and building things and understanding what you can do? It's part of their development. So the main thing is validating and asking questions, you know. Well, what are you interested in? Wow, would you like to get this? Do you like music? You like this kind of music that plays while you're doing the game? You know, would you like to, you know, play something? Would you like to play an instrument? So being curious rather than judgmental. Curious. What else would you like? What are you interested in? Being curious, asking questions. That was a long answer. I hope that was helpful. We missed our host. There he is.
Oh, sorry about that. I was expecting maybe if Kapil had a follow-up question, or if the other person, Arti, had a follow-up question to this. In the meanwhile,
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. Done it now.
Yeah, was that helpful?
Yes.
You really got to stretch your own creativity. You've got to stretch your own creativity and say, okay, you can't pound it in. It's not going to work. You know, we're not hammering a nail. We're not hammering a nail. We're not building a house. We're building character. So it's more like a dance. You got to like, and some days it works and some days it doesn't work. Some days they're not open. Some days they are open. When they're open, oh, that's great. And when they're not open, they're not open. I have 2 teenage grandsons, so I know my son deals with that a lot. So,
if RT would also like to ask any follow-up questions or comments.
No, Mataji. I think that was really helpful and very that advice was looking at the same problem in a different way. So I think I will definitely try it out. That should be a different approach.
It's actually not a problem. It's a child trying to meet their needs. And these devices are just so, here they are, they're in your face and they've got everything. They're an entertainment, movies, theater, all in one. But, you know, let's look at other options. Yeah, that's it.
That's true. Thank you, Mataji.
You're welcome. Hi, Krishna.
Thank you. That was really cool. The way you just sort of turn the tables by saying, instead of judgmental, just be curious, and that really changes the way we approach things. This kind of adds to what you just discussed, but from a very different angle. And I think this is more about discipline. The question here is, how strict, because we do want to instill values, how strict should we be about asking the child to chant, eat Krishna prasadam, and other Krishna conscious activities, especially if the child is not interested? And this, I think you were talking earlier about, certain approach that was taken back in the day or in the Gurukula system. I myself went to Vrindavan Gurukul for most of my childhood. So I think this is a question you might find very interesting.
Yes, it's a very important question. So I always say, well, if you want your children to hate Krishna, by all means, force them to chant. Because whatever you force down their throat, they're gonna resent it later on, especially if they don't want to do it now. My son, I'll give him as an example. I'm sure he won't mind. He was brought up in the Gurukula and they were forced to chant, and sometimes I think sometimes they were, even if they did something wrong, I think there was sometimes they were punished. Now you have to go and chant 3 rounds or something like that. It's used as a punishment. So a few years back, it was Janmashtami, and he said, I thought maybe I would chant a round, I'd chant, for Janmashtami. So he did, and I said, so how was that for you? He said, it was excruciatingly painful. But my kids all love kirtan. They love kirtan. They love to sing, but kirtan was more fun. And then the force, the discipline. So the main thing that children learn more from your words and more from your force, they learn by your example. If you're chanting and you're happy, they might be interested. If you're chanting and you're stressed, or you're chanting and you're neglectful, they may not be interested. If you say, I don't have time to talk to you, I got to chant my rounds. I got to chant my rounds. I don't have time to be with you. I got to chant my rounds. Your kids are going to hate Krishna because Krishna and your rounds are taking you away from them. Yeah, so there's that. So you want to encourage, and you want to encourage again by your example. Now, when children are really tiny, when they're really little, you see these 2-year-olds, they pay obeisances, they do it, they bow down, they fold their hands. Mommy likes me when I fold my hands. It's very easy to show them simple things. As they grow, they may not be interested in chanting. So you can invite them and you can encourage them. I don't see force as being a positive way for long-term Krishna consciousness. Even Prabhupada said we can't force. We really can't force. And sometimes what we try to force has a backlash and it has the opposite effect. So yeah, discipline, you want to have firm structure with flexibility. So I'll give you an example in life. The strongest type of bridge that there is not one made of concrete, steel and concrete and grounded in the ground. The strongest bridge is a suspension bridge. Suspension bridge has piers at the end. It's got the structure at the end, but then there's these huge wires that stretch and span the distance, and then these steel cables are able to move and fluctuate. If there's a windstorm or a hurricane, they can move a little bit. So something that's made of solid concrete, it can break and crack if there's an earthquake or the air is moving. They can crack. Concrete can crack if the earth moves. But a steel structure that can swing and sway and is a little flexible, it's got structure to it, and it can, cars can drive over top of it, but it's got some flexibility to it. So that would be my suggestion as a parent. Practice being firm with some structure, but then flexibility also. Hope that was helpful.
Neelam Mataji, would you like to respond? Herbo?
We face the problem many times. Whenever we take the kids for picnics, they are carrying money and they want to buy things from outside, ice creams and packets of chips and all that, and it becomes a real challenge for us. So how do we manage this? Because kids like you, they are eating prasadam, but at the same time they want the other things also.
Yeah, so you take those things and you teach them how to offer those things, and you say, we're not going to get candy every day or chips every day, but you know, you take them and you offer them to Krishna, and you say, you know, let's offer this to Krishna. I mean, kids like ice cream. That's understandable. If you want to make ice cream at home for them, then they might not want to buy it outside. You know, maybe you can make chips. Maybe they won't want to buy it outside, but I know that kids like snack food. They like chips and they like ice cream. So show them how to offer. Because when they grow up, especially if they're a guy, they might not be cooking every day for themselves, and they might go out and buy something. So then at least you've taught them how to offer the food. Does that make sense?
Yes, Mataji, it does make sense. This was specifically during the picnics of the Sunday school children. Because there we don't have the option of offering, and you know, they are running that we want to have, and it becomes very tough for us.
Maybe the teacher should consider buying ice cream and offering it and having it there for the kids and making some snacks. I mean, you can make those Indian snacks. You can roast them up and have a big thing of snacks. Maybe if that's what the kids want, maybe provide it for them and have it offered as prasadam, and then they won't want to run out and get it. It's there.
Right, Mataji, thank you.
If I may add to that, I still remember, I think I was about 9, and every Ekadashi, I was in the Gurukul, and every Ekadashi, our ashram teacher would take us on Vrindavan Parikram. And what was really interesting was that I still remember my very first time as I was doing it, all the other kids were actually very excited to finish the parikram, because they knew that when we finished the parikram, we were all going to sit down for a big fat glass of lassi. So, and of course, at the time, this is right in front of Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan. And there's this guy called Bihari Lal. So the lassis were there. And of course, everyone would be like, right before they would go to drink, everyone would stop and we would do the Mahaprasadam prayers, or our ashram teacher would say, you know, the Go Brahmana Hitayacha, and like he would mentally offer it to Krishna. So I know that it's perhaps not the most proper. There are instances in which we also summon or invoke the presence of Tulsi through her mantra. So it was very interesting when you mentioned the suspension bridge, because if structure can be there with flexibility, that's very important. Because I realized that when I first left my bubble, my family, and I went outside into the regular world, and where I didn't always want to cook for myself, and I happen to be one of those rare guys who actually likes cooking. But there were times when I would get a juice or something outside, and because I didn't have an aversion to it, I would just, even though I had my deities at home that I would sometimes take and offer things to, I would at times use my neck beads or use like one of those ways around. And I know that sometimes devotees feel that, oh, that's not a proper rule. But I think there's a difference between principle and details. And often we get so lost in the details of how things should be, and this is the step. The principle gets lost. And the principle is that whatever we eat, we must first offer to Krishna, because we love Krishna, and whatever we eat has to be had by him, so we can receive his remnants. And I think that mood perhaps is the principle. And this is my understanding from my upbringing, but I could be wrong. But I'm just putting it out there that perhaps the principle here is that this is for Krishna and I want to offer it to Krishna. And the detail of how I offer it to Krishna if I'm in the temple on the altar, I'd be able to use my Brahmin thread and do the mudras. If I'm at home, maybe I won't be as elaborate with my deities. And if I'm out traveling in a train, I mean, Prabhupada went to the West and he had to put the same things he had to put around places where there was meat, things, he would adjust. So, yeah, that's just my long-winded little response to, because for me, it struck a chord. Because it was a very strong part of my upbringing, and there were both sides that I experienced. I experienced the extremes, and I experienced also flexibility, and that's what stayed with me.
Yes, and see, take it from the voice of the babes. He's a second generation, and he's saying it from his own experience and how it's affected him, and that flexibility really has helped him to adjust. And Krishna consciousness is not about fanaticism; it's about being conscious of Krishna. Okay, I'm out here, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need to get something, I need to nourish this body that's Krishna's temple. Please, Krishna, accept this offering. And like that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. I just had one last question. I know we're coming to a close, and maybe you could also give your concluding words if you'd like after as you answer this question. I was wondering, you've mentioned throughout this session the word validation, and how important it is to solidify that base of self-esteem. And it's something that a lot of adults struggle with as well, if they don't have that. What exactly is validation, and what could it look like? What could be the different forms throughout different ages? Perhaps if you could illustrate through a few examples, and then maybe some of our listeners could think of how it may apply to their situation, say with a 2-year-old or with a 14-year-old, what have you, or with adult children who are 20.
Okay, so validation is basically giving ear to, really giving ear to, and let me see the other word besides validation. Giving ear to and giving consideration and giving
empathy,
but it's more like you're giving substance to someone's experience. You're giving substance to someone's experience. So you may be in a situation and you have three kids of different ages, and something happens and there's a thunderstorm. One child may cry, one child may run in the rain, and one child may go inside and play on their phone. So one event happened, and there were 3 different experiences for 3 different children. So each child's experience of the thunderstorm is different, but their experience, you want to validate their experience, that their experience is what they experienced. The child that was crying and fearful, their experience was very real for them. You want to give substance to, like, oh, that was scary. That thunder was really loud and it cracked and you were scared. Yes, that was very scary. And the child who wants to play, wow, and you don't run out in the open field or stay under a tree. But yes, going out in the rain is fun. You want to have some fun, and you're enjoying the rain on your body. You validate that experience. You're not really interested in getting wet, and you just, it doesn't really bother you, the thunder, but you want to go inside and, play on your phone right now because you can't go outside and play because it's too wet, because you don't want to get wet. So yeah, so go in, and so you're validating the experience. So because what happens in life, things happen, and different people have different experiences. So validating someone's experience is giving it some substance. Yes, that's how it was for you, or that's how it is for you right now. So validation isn't necessarily logical. So a lot of times we'll use scripture or we'll use, you know, advice, and we'll say, stop crying. There's nothing to cry about. You know, it's not a big deal. You cut your finger. Don't cry. Stop crying. Be a big boy. It's like, my finger, look at it's bleeding. It's like, the child needs to be heard. They need you to understand that this is like, it's traumatic for them in that moment. And when you can give them some support, okay, yeah, it is cut. Okay, let's take care of it. Okay, all right, we'll put this cream on it. We'll put a Band-Aid on it. It's going to heal. Krishna made your body so that even if it gets cut, it can heal. Or, oh my goodness, that's a very deep cut. I think we might have to get some stitches. No, I don't want to get stitches. Well, we want to sew it up so it can heal, you know, so it can heal. Otherwise, you're going to have a big split there and you might get an infection in it. So you have to deal with the emotions, not just with logical. Don't cry, be a big boy. It's not going to, it doesn't enter in the child's experience. Empathy, yes, the word empathy. Empathizing with their experience. Giving validation, empathizing. It didn't click with me in that one moment, but yes. Validation is giving empathy. They have feelings. Their feelings are real. And their feelings are pointing to a certain need. I have a need to be cared for. My finger is cut. I have a need for some attention to this. I have a need for some space. Right now, I don't want to be in the thunderstorm. I want to go inside and be by myself. I have a need for space. So validation is understanding a person's feelings and their needs in that moment. And our feelings and our needs can change from moment to moment to moment to moment. And that's why it's a conscious process. You actually have to really be conscious. Empathy is a conscious process. You got to actually really get what's going on in this minute. Not that you shouldn't be crying. It doesn't make sense that you're crying over a little finger. Well, it might not make sense to me, but it certainly makes sense to the child who's crying. So, yeah. Empathy, feelings and needs. It's a really, 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 really wonderful tool, understanding feelings and needs. You know, when I learned compassionate communication and I applied in my life, it changes all of my exchanges, all of them. So that's what validation is. Was that okay?
Thank you. That really helps. What really stood out to me was at one point you said to be heard. And I think we all go through life a lot of times feeling that no one's listening to us. And that is why a lot of people go to therapy. Or we find support structures through our friends, through someone close to us, because we want to feel, even if it's something we know the solutions, the whole world has solutions. We know what the solution to our problem is, but what we don't get often is someone saying, I hear you. Mm-hmm. I feel for you.
Yes.
And that is the starting of empathy. So I really thank you so much for sharing that. And that is definitely at the crux of validation.
And I want to add one more thing, being seen, like I see you, I hear you. I'm here with you. It's actually a foundation of personalism. You know, I see you, you're a person, you're an individual, you're having an experience. I see you and I hear you. That's personalism. Otherwise, it's kind of like we're disconnected. So yeah, being seen and being heard are very, very, that's what kids want. They want to be seen and they want to be heard. Now, it's not that you can provide that need for them 24/7. Sometimes you need to be seen and you need to be heard. But, you know, when you understand that that's what a child often needs, to be seen and to be heard, when you can validate them and see them and hear them, then they can calm down, then they can go and play again by themselves. But if you don't and you invalidate them or you push them away, they will be becoming more and more and more, and they'll be becoming more insecure, and they'll be asking for that validation more and more because they're not getting it. So yeah, if you can provide it, then it can be, the child can have balance. So thank you so much, everybody, for your great questions. Thank you for your great hosting and your additions. I really like that. And I hope that, you know, what we spoke was of value for everybody. And if there's anything else to say, I'm just so grateful to spend the time with all of you. And
Thank
you so much, Mataji.
Mataji.
yeah, I'm open to spending time again. And I will be teaching a course online, I think in November or maybe December, on compassionate communication. So once we get the date, you know, we can maybe open it up to the general public and